Los Angeles, California. With 13 million people and over 1,000 emergencies a day, it's often referred to as the local news capital of the world. Video journalists have captured an unbelievable catalog of events.
To see what our members had to endure is very difficult.
This is almost like a movie. It's hard to believe that this was real life.
With our first on-scene heroes' perspectives, this is an insight into their most thrilling moments. In this episode, video journalist Howard springs into action.
He discovered a vehicle on the side of the road, smashed up, on fire.
A tense standoff with police.
Honestly, I was shaking when I was watching it. Please don't touch the gun, don't touch the gun. I don't want to see this, don't touch the gun.
And a camper gets far too close to nature.
An older man that was up in the hills got swatted by a bear.
Los Angeles has over 54,000 car crashes each year, and when speeding comes into play, the outcome can be deadly. It's 9 p.m. in Anaheim, and first responders have been called out to a high-speed collision ending in flames. Surveillance footage captures the event.
It appears that a couple of youngsters went for a joyride. They were traveling at a high rate of speed before losing control and flipping their truck and taking out a palm tree.
Where you have a pickup truck driving at a high rate of speed, hit the curb, ultimately struck a tree, rolled over, ejecting a patient. The first arriving fire engine is going to grab a water supply from a fire hydrant to feed water into their fire engine, take off separate smaller hose lines, connect them to a nozzle and into a pump to increase the pressure and put out the fire. If it did have a fuel leak, we'll often dike that up or stop it, use sawdust, make sure it doesn't go into a storm drain because we're also concerned about the environment.
People driving at excessively high speeds are very careless and irresponsible. This is one of the most dangerous things you can do while being behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Patients were already out upon fire department arrival, but you still have a significant fire in the engine bay spreading to the passenger area of the truck. Firefighters need to quickly extinguish that, ensure that there is nobody left inside the passenger area of the truck, and then treat the patients that are outside.
These two individuals were extremely lucky to get out of the situation alive. One day, I'm gonna have to let my kids drive on the streets. Hopefully, I've done enough to ensure that they don't end up in an accident like this one.
The two joyriders are taken to hospital to treat their injuries, lucky to have survived the shocking crash. In a city of 13 million people, first responders encounter the strange and unusual every single day. Sometimes, these situations have underlying issues and dangers that require more than just rescue equipment. It's 11 p.m. in Norwalk, southeast of Los Angeles, and there are reports of a man acting strangely on top of a tall structure.
There's definitely stories that still surprise me. I mean, you think you've seen everything, and this one was new. I'd not seen this one. What was going through their brain? This guy had managed to make his way up probably 100 feet to the top of a silo. He's singing, he's serenading the cops. I mean, he's got some lungs on him.
So this is a very precarious situation, being so high up in that area. Simply losing footing, falling off the back, the side, the front of this can turn to being deadly.
There's a guy 100 foot up on top of a silo. Number one is, why is he there? Number two, how do we get him down and not hurt anybody? And how do we stay safe ourselves? Just because they're up there and they train, you know, there's still risk to these first responders in something like this.
We have to factor in the potential mental health issue. We know they're obviously not acting appropriately, and they're a danger to themselves, they're a danger to other people, so we don't want to become victims ourselves.
They must have approached this with extreme caution. One false move and he's gone. I mean, there's no coming back from that. That's a long way down. They've taken the ladder up to the top there and he's shaking it, so they're not going to take a firefighter to the top of that. They're not going to risk their own lives for that.
They're waiting for these negotiations to take place, for that person to come down or potentially jump.
It gets a little hairy at one point. You can see the ladder start coming down. He's going back up, trying to make that jump across the gap, but he didn't quite make it.
Fortunately, this ended well. That individual climbed down on the ladder, it was lowered. Firefighters were able to harness that individual so he didn't create any harm to himself or others, and ultimately bring him to a hospital where you get some more definitive care to determine exactly what's going on with him.
After a 3-hour standoff, the man is eventually lowered down safely and taken to the hospital for evaluation. Coming up.
The subject bends down to pick up the gun.
Honestly, I was shaking when I was watching it.
But first,
He discovered a vehicle on fire.
Cameraman got there quick, did an amazing job.
first responders in Los Angeles are on the scene of dozens of horrific car accidents every single day. Sometimes these tragic accidents are caused by poor decisions of thoughtless people. It's 2 a.m. in Van Nuys, and calls have come in of a crash on the freeway. Video journalist Howard rushes to extinguish the flames.
Our cameraman, Howard, he arrived on scene after he heard a call come out of a pedestrian hit and killed on the freeway. When Howard arrived there, he discovered a vehicle on the side of the road, smashed up on fire. As you can see, he grabbed the fire extinguisher and went to put that fire out in the vehicle.
Cameraman got there quick, did an amazing job having a fire extinguisher readily available and extinguishing the fire.
What happened in this story is quite bizarre. A vehicle, an Uber, was traveling southbound on the freeway. A woman decided to get out of the vehicle while it was moving. She jumped out of the car and ran across the freeway, and as she jumped over the center divider wall, a car heading northbound collided with the subject.
The woman's reckless actions put her life in danger. Tragically, the driver has also made a thoughtless decision.
DUI is a major portion of all the traffic collisions that I've dealt with in my career. I worked in traffic for almost 10 years, and the fatality rates of pedestrians being struck by vehicles was very high.
Unfortunately, day in and day out, we see all these different unfortunate accidents that lead to people getting seriously injured or killed because people make that selfish decision to drive while intoxicated.
It's beyond me why they still do it. There are so many different options that you can choose rather than getting behind the wheel.
The ending of the scene was tragic. Somebody lost their life. And we also saw that the person that hit this patient was placed into custody, and you could see the extensive damage to his vehicle, which shows the force of that impact.
Two mistakes created a preventable tragedy. Gun violence is an everyday occurrence in Los Angeles. But when the shooter isn't complying, officers must change their tactics. It's just after 2 a.m. in Ventura, and a woman is in a tense standoff with police.
So officers receive a phone call indicating that there is a subject in the middle of an intersection. When officers respond on scene, they find an individual with a weapon right next to her.
I mean, she's obviously suffering some sort of mental illness. I mean, at what point do you decide it's a good idea to sit in the middle of the street to try and get attention with a gun?
Put your hands on the back of your head and walk backwards to the sound of my voice.
When police arrived on scene, the woman was uncooperative.
The officer set up and began to give her instructions. However, she's not compliant.
Ventura Police, can we please talk? Just put your hands on the back of your head.
The woman had the gun placed on the ground and was standing over it.
These type of situations are extremely stressful for officers. Any movement with that weapon towards the officers would result in her being shot and possibly dying.
You can clearly see there's a gun on the floor, and the police department are telling her, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. I mean, it's, honestly, I was shaking when I was watching it. Please don't touch the gun, don't touch the gun. I don't want to see this, don't touch the gun. Do I think I would put my camera and zoom in on that? No. I don't want to see that. No one wants to see that. She needs help, she needs attention. Not from a news camera. It's kind of disgusting, it's disturbing. There's things I will film and there's things I won't, and this I wouldn't.
If I was there on scene, I would have put my emotions to the side and I would have been focused on the suspect. That is a news story.
The officers continue to give instructions, trying to tell the lady to come over. Keep your hands where we can see them. But most importantly, don't go for that gun. The subject bends down to pick up the gun.
No, don't pick it up! No!
Coming up.
Getting hit like that is like getting hit with a baseball by a pro pitcher.
In my eyes, this is a heroic act.
And
Got swatted by a bear, and the bear followed him.
in Ventura, police are in tense negotiations with a woman who has a gun. The standoff has escalated because she refuses to comply with officers' orders.
You can clearly see there's a gun on the floor, and the police department are telling her, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it.
The subject bends down to pick up the gun.
No, pick it up! No!
The officers discharge their less lethal rounds, striking her twice.
Disarming her, they knock the gun out of her hand and save her life. In situations like this, the police will often use what they call less than lethal rounds. They're little beanbags full of little beans that sting like you wouldn't believe. I mean, they'll knock you to the ground. I mean, it's a really effective way to get you to comply without using lethal weapons like a gun.
Those rounds are 40 millimeter less lethal rounds, traveling at a speed of 100 to 120 miles an hour. Getting hit like that is like getting hit with a baseball by a pro pitcher.
This could have ended much different. If she had have picked that gun up and pointed towards officers, they would have returned fire with lethal rounds, and it would have been fatal.
Because she put it to her own head in such a manner that didn't threaten the officers, less lethal munitions were used instead.
In my eyes, this is a heroic act. I mean, it really is. This shows the training, the precision, the accuracy that these guys train for. And to disarm a woman with a firearm, I mean, they saved this woman's life without a doubt.
So at the end of this video, it all ended peacefully. Officers moved in, arrested the woman, took her into custody. These officers, their job is to preserve life. Full credit to them. They saved someone's life.
The woman is taken away to receive the help she needs, and officers discover that the gun is a replica. Nearly 30,000 cars are stolen every year in Los Angeles. But it's very rare that these stolen vehicles belong to first responders. It's 2 a.m. in Sherman Oaks, and a thief has taken a chance to steal an ambulance.
So what we've got here is an ambulance crashed in the middle of the street. The initial call came out as an ambulance was stolen from the emergency department at the hospital.
This just goes to show that anything and everything happens in this city. What makes this story so bizarre is an ambulance got stolen. Can you imagine if there was like a patient in the back of this? What was the suspect actually thinking, and where would they have gone?
It's not very common for an ambulance, a police car, a fire truck, or any law enforcement first responder vehicles being stolen. But this guy thought he could take an ambulance for a joyride. I bet he had no idea that it was going to end like this.
Los Angeles firefighters transport about 600 people to the hospital every single day. So they're running calls back to back to back. And what a tragic incident that you come back out of the hospital to your ambulance to run your next call, and the ambulance is gone.
The police get involved chasing the ambulance. Ambulance ends up crashing into some poor innocent individuals who get very hurt because the ambulance is larger than their vehicle. Sad situation.
I think the intensity is when they're pursuing this vehicle, because the average person on the roads are probably thinking this ambulance is in need to get to the hospital, not knowing that there's actually a bad guy behind the wheel. So this could have gotten a lot worse.
We applaud the efforts of LAPD, who swiftly were able to locate the ambulance, pursue them. Tragically, the ambulance already struck 2 other vehicles and injured 4 people, but ultimately, no one had died. The ambulance was recovered, and we appreciate law enforcement help.
3 innocent motorists were injured and taken to the hospital for treatment. The driver was apprehended and also transported to the hospital, hopefully in the back of the ambulance rather than the driver's seat. Coming up.
Got swatted by a bear, survived.
And he jumped over a fence at a house.
The bear followed him.
California state animal, cute, cuddly, and curious. Bears wandering around make for great shots for news. But these animals are wild beasts, and the threat they pose can't be underestimated. It's just after 11 p.m. in Santa Anita, and a call comes in from a desperate camper.
Here we have an older man that was up in the hills, got swatted by a bear, survived, started to go to safety towards a home, and the bear followed him.
The man ran down the hill as the bear followed him, and he jumped over a fence at a house and stood behind it until the bear left. The man suffered cuts and bruises to his face and hands. This could have been much worse.
This is actually quite frightening. Imagine trying to, take a nap or take a stroll and the unexpected happens. We see so many bear videos, but we don't actually see them attacking people.
Bears typically are not there to harm you, especially if you make yourself known. They'll usually leave you alone. But they're there to protect things they care about, just like you would. They're going to protect their home, their kids, or their food. So as arriving on scene as first responders, we're always going to be concerned about safety. That's our number one issue on every incident. So is the bear still around? That could potentially harm us is going to be a concern. We're going to get that individual to a safe place, evaluated by a firefighter, paramedics, determine if there's any significant injury, encourage that person to be transported to the hospital, treat and wrap the arm wounds.
Fish and Wildlife would have got a description from the victim of what the bear looked like, and they would have just kept an eye out for it if they had any more reports come in of a bear sighting in that area.
The man is treated for his injuries and returns to his camp, wounded but still walking. Los Angeles, California, home of the rich and famous. Tourists flock here hoping for a brush with fame. But what happens if you live here and a famous neighbor throws a party that gets out of control?
When any celebrity throws a really disruptive party, it becomes news.
The problem here is the large crowd that has gathered. They are blocking the roadway with their persons, with their vehicles. There's not much access for ingress and egress, getting in and out of the street.
There was reports they had a party with 1,500 people with all of the streets blocked in the area. A lot of neighbors phoned 911 to report a loud party in progress after hours and all the streets being blocked. I mean, it's a valid complaint. I mean, everybody loves a good party. I do too. 1,500 people in a quiet neighborhood blocking streets at 2 a.m.? Come on.
Need to basically shut down that party and get the partygoers on their way out of the neighborhood because it's just clogging all of the streets.
The cops responded. Not only did they respond on ground, they responded in the air too. They had a chopper overhead. I mean, it was pretty crazy. I'm filming all the chaos from the ground, and there are cars everywhere, parked on the sidewalks, parked blocking fire hydrants, up on the grass. I mean, no one would get in or out. And the police came in, they used their loudspeakers. You need to move, you need to go, get your cars out of here now, get your cars out, move, move, move. It probably took half hour to get rid of all those cars and all the people. It was quite a scene.
You think it's innocent, and it could be, but I guess, neighbors get really upset.
The stations loved this story. Not only the stations, TMZ bought it. I mean, a celebrity in trouble.
The way this ended, LAPD was able to disperse the crowd and everybody left the area peacefully.